Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout as we look ahead to Fantasy Premier League Game Week 22 and the rest of 2024. It's General's orders time as Mark, aka the FPL General, reveals his thoughts and plans for the upcoming game week. My name is Joe. Mark, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Joe. I say I'm good, but FPL wise, I'm not so good. I'm hoping this is going to be a bit of a therapy session with yourself to get me through
Yeah.
this very long January, and it's the worst possible time to have a terrible game week, which I'm currently having. So we need Mr. Estupinen from your boys Brighton to bail me out on Monday night.
Well, we're quite similar. I've only got I think I took a hit, so I'm on 50 points. So you're on about 44, but we'll put your team up in a sec, and then. And we're both relying on a stupid ad to save our game week. But yeah, we've both taken a bit of a drop in the rankings this week, but it's still very tight, still very close. And I noted this week as well, neither of us have Darwin Núñez because we're quite sensible managers who like players that are totally nailed on and put away their chances. And but I noticed when I was doing the preparation for the Scoutcast tonight, Rich not only has him in this team, but captained him, which is a very bold move. And as a result, I think he's gone up around about 150 places. So he's, I think, ahead of you and very close to me. And he was
amazing race.
Yeah. So that's how close it is. And all you need is one good call in one good week. Okay. Just before we go on, just a reminder to everyone to do press that like button and do subscribe as well. And also do check out fantasyfootballscout.co.uk for the latest members offers as well. Okay, so let's have a look at your team currently. As I said, you and I are relying on Estupiñán. Let's hope he gets one of his goals, assists, clean sheet hauls that are rare but happen. So do you want to take us through your team and some of your decisions? Because I seem to remember your bus team having Palmer captain, and that's changed.
Yeah, so just for the audio listeners, the team ended up with David Raya in goal, Porro, Stupin and Trent, Foden, Bowen, Saka captain and Palmer, and the three stooges up front who did nothing, Alvarez, Watkins and Solanke. So first up, Gusto will sub in for Trent for 5 points, which is very much needed. I ended up just leaving Bowen in the starting 11. I always thought small chance, you never know with David Moyes, and it turned out that he did play. So I was quite excited when I seen Bowen in the starting 11 against Sheffield United, but of course he added to the sea of blanks this week. The transfer ended up being Salah out for Phil Foden. I ended up spending a lot of time, I think on the last video, Foden versus Odegaard. I wasn't really sure which way to go. Double game week factor for City kind of won out in the end. And of course, both blanked. And Richarlison, who was probably third in line, scored. So I did not enjoy seeing Richarlison score. But at least it was Pedro Porro who got the assist for that one. Pretty frustrating game week because this is obviously a recently wildcarded squad. 2 weeks ago, Gabriel was in my team since game week 1, suffered through all the pain, all the benchings, all the price drops. And then you wildcard and you take him out, you put Raya in instead. And Gabriel goes and almost scores twice. Thankfully, it was just an assist in the end. But it's one of those things in FPL where, I mean, the chances of Gabriel getting a 16, 17 pointer are extremely low. You know, it might never happen again. At least I did have the David Raya insurance against it a wee bit. But of course, when other things didn't go well, Saka blanks in a 5-goal game. I did switch over from Palmer. I think that was a close decision for a lot of people. So all in all, just one of those weeks where very little went right, and a lot of other players that other managers had obviously performed well. And captaincy, I just miss owning Perma captain Haaland because I think I struggle a bit when I need to go elsewhere.
Yeah, same with me with Haaland missing and Salah as well. Salah's so reliable, getting those returns. And without them, it's hard to know where to put the armband. And I know a bit later we'll talk about some Man City options because they face Burnley in Gameweek 22, and that's probably the standout fixture from a captaincy point of view. But yeah, I had similar issues to you as well. I mean, I did get Gabriel's haul, and I maintain no matter what, I deserve it because I kept him for Gameweek 1 when he let everyone down. So yeah, he owed me, and also I benched him for his previous goal against Liverpool. But yeah, it's lots of tricky things. I also got Foden in as well, and that Foden. But I feel happy having Foden. I don't know how you feel with Foden in your side. I know we'll talk about Man City in a bit, but I think, yes, he blanked in this game, but he's still an attacking player in a very attacking side with a double game week coming up. So I, I feel okay having Foden. I don't mind him blanking.
Yeah, I'm quite a happy new owner. Obviously, a blank straight off the bat is not what I was hoping for, especially in another good City performance where they score goals. But again, frustrating this week when you see the likes of Jota, Richarlison in the points. But long term, give that 4 or 5 game weeks, factor in the double game week, and I'm still confident that Phil Foden will be a good pick and should return points. So it was never a short term transfer. So he's going to be in there for a while, I think.
And well, I've sort of learnt something this week. I don't know whether you have as well, but around Saka Palmer captaincy, because I was umming and ahhing about it, and it obviously ended up with Saka as well for that blank. And then there was a lot of people saying it was the wrong decision, and obviously it's not the wrong decision. Saka's an attacking player in an attacking side, and I think he could have got a haul, might not have done. It's just the way it is, but. I did a bit of research during the week. This game week preparation has been so long, and I've been doing a number of videos this week. And one of the videos I did was on Team Talisman, and about looking at those who are most involved. So I did it for this season so far, but did it by goal involvement when they're on the pitch. So obviously now that's got players like, say, Chris Wood at Nottingham Forest in there. But I was focusing on those talisman from attacking sides, and by that I'm talking Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, and from Arsenal there were no talisman. There was, and by talisman I mean getting at least 40% goal involvement, and there weren't any. And because Jesus might score, Martinelli might score, Odegaard might score, Saka might score, but with Chelsea, and they were listed as quite an attacking side in terms of actual goals, it was Palmer. And Palmer was there. And so, for example, Newcastle, another attacking side, Isak is there. But Arsenal had no one. Man City, it was Haaland. That's no surprise there. Liverpool, Salah, no surprise there. But it made me think that if I'd have done that research before I'd made the decision, that would have swayed me towards Palmer, I think. It's all in hindsight now, but I do look back at that and think if I'd have done that research before, I would have made a different decision.
Yeah, but again, I feel like we got the right game for the captaincy.
Yeah.
If you're going, someone's going to tell you one team's going to score 5 and the other's going to score once. I think it was one that Chelsea scored. You're always going to back a player from the attacking team who scored 5. So I think it's just one of those things. Yes, Saka hasn't been as good as he's been in previous seasons FPL wise, but I watched that Arsenal game and he was in the box. There was quite a few occasions where he was available. Martinelli, maybe on both occasions, took the shots on, and Saka is in good positions. Again, I always say on another day, you get a Palmer blank and you get Saka getting multiple goal involvements in the 5 goals. So I still feel like if I was on that decision, let's say in 4 weeks' time, I still think I'd probably go Saka again if. Even with what we know now. But I do take your point on the talisman theory, and obviously it's been something I've been thinking about as well. And it's all, Ivan Toney comes to mind from Brentford as well. When you get a goal notification, you just knew yesterday it was going to be Ivan Toney when the Brentford goal came through. And you can say the same about Palmer these days, and you can't say that about Saka. So certainly one to keep in mind going forward with our picks and with our captains.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why on this talisman list, I did have Bowen there, even though West Ham aren't a very attacking side. I do think I was quite surprised yesterday when I saw the result of that game, and it was like Bowen. Sorry, my door's just open because the dog is about to come in. Hopefully,
Say hello
or not. In a second, the dog will come in. But yeah, so I was looking at that and I was thinking, wow, Bowen must have got like a couple of goals, a couple of assists, and so it was quite surprising. But I didn't actually watch that game, but it sounds like it was completely teapots.
Yeah, I watched it, and again, it was another frustrating one as a Bowen owner because 2 chances in particular come to mind. There was one early doors. He was in the box, just beat the defender, and on his left foot, you just fancy him to stick one in the bottom corner, but he dragged it wide, and then there was a corner that just landed right at his feet, 6 yards out, and I think he was surprised about how good a chance it was. So in the positions, as he always is, he's like a magnet, Jarbo in the box. So again, a blank, but I look at this team: Foden blanks, Bowen blanks, the three strikers. Fast forward to game week, all five of those guys could do
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
They're still good. They're still fine FPL picks. So
yeah.
there's no need to panic
No.
after a bad game week. And I think, again, not too much in terms of generals orders this week. We'll hold off on that for next week. But overall, just to throw it in, we're going to learn a lot this week. There's a lot of cup competitions before. The deadline's not until next Tuesday. So the overall order this week is just be patient. Again, wait for the information, especially if you're like me and you've had a bad game week. The temptation is always to try and fix things right away. But I'll just be sitting with us, looking at my big fat red arrow for the best part of a week and not doing anything until next Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah. And also, I mean, just going back to the Saka point as well about sort of not being hasty, because I know a lot of people would have probably rage transferred him out. But I saw this post, it was from Late Riser, actually. It was quite interesting. It was something that he had noted, that he had hoped that Arteta had got the wingers, as in Saka, Martinelli, or indeed Trossard starting, much closer to goal, much closer to the penalty box rather than hogging the touchline. And he felt he saw that. He felt he saw Saka and Trossard and Martinelli doing that, and it was in fact Martinelli and Trossard who benefited, but another week it could have been Saka. So he felt there was a change there, and it was something that I was hopeful for, very optimistic that Arteta looked like the kind of manager that was going to make Arsenal better during the break.
Yeah, and 5 goals shows that he did. And again, I watching the game in terms of the eye test with Saka, there's been a lot of occasions this season where he's been non-existent, really, is hogging the touchline and doesn't get too many good opportunities. And he didn't have too many good opportunities at the weekend either, but there was enough there for me to think he's certainly not anywhere near the weakest link in my team just yet.
No.
And Nottingham Forest coming up next, which is absolutely fine. And again, more importantly, a good performance from Arsenal and lots of goals. So hopefully that continues. And if it does, Saka will be involved eventually. So a bit of patience with him, I think.
Okay, let's have a look at the season ticker. So this is from 22 up to 28. And we've got the Man City double in here, which Man City have Chelsea and Brentford, game 25. So immediately that says target Man City. They've got a sea of blue fixtures as well. Brentford also double, Liverpool, Man City, but we've seen what Ivan Toney can do over the recent years. This also shows that Brighton are top still in terms of fixtures. Aston Villa have a strong fixture run. So do Crystal Palace. They may or may not be with their current manager by then. Arsenal as well have a very strong fixture run. Burnley, Chelsea, Everton and Nottingham Forest are amongst those with poorer fixtures there. And as you were talking about patience and what could change, what we might know is who is going to be in the League Cup final and will blank in 26. So that could be Chelsea against Tottenham, and it could be Liverpool against who are they playing there? Liverpool against Luton. So they could be a blank then, and they could be doubles in 25 possibly as well. So we'll know, we'll certainly be a bit clearer about that situation. But aside from those issues there, but I mean, looking at the fixture ticker, what does it look like for you in terms of potential future targets as someone who looks at the fixtures?
Yeah, well, I should be pretty well set up already when you look at a fixture ticker with a wildcard just recently played, because the scout fixture ticker plays a big part in any wildcard squad that I build. So, I look straight away at the top of the ticker, Brighton, I've got a Stupin already in place. Man City, I've got Alvarez and Foden, and obviously we'll get Haaland back as soon as he's available. Then Villa come in next. You've got Ollie Watkins in there already. Arsenal, I've got Saka, I've got David Raya. It's more the upcoming doubles that are catching my eye now with possible next few transfers. So Brentford, and again, another reason to be patient this week is, you look at a double game week on the horizon for Brentford for Ivan Toney, but we've got 9 or 10 days left of the transfer window. And he probably will stay at Brentford, but we just don't know. I watched the Arsenal game at the weekend, and I thought Gabriel Jesus, it was really frustrating to watch actually as a Saka owner, because Jesus got caught offside 5, 6, 7 times. And I was just watching that Arsenal game and I was thinking, Ivan Toney's just a perfect fit for this team. So it'll be interesting to see if anything does happen there, because obviously there's been a lot of links. I think he's an Arsenal fan as well. So you could buy Toney this week looking at a fixture ticker and he might not have a double game week by the time we get to the 1st of February because he could be playing for another team. So just be careful with those kind of things as well. I mentioned Manchester City. Liverpool likely double game week, but we'll obviously get confirmation of that in the near future, depending on the results later this week. It didn't feel good having no Liverpool players for that big performance. I had Trent on the bench. Jota and Darwin have put their hands up now, I think, especially for managers like ourselves who are maybe a bit more reluctant to go there.
Yeah.
If Salah's injury is going to be, longer than we expect, maybe we can go there. So, plenty to take away from this ticker.
Okay. Now, you mentioned when you looked at your team about your strikers were blanking, and you were a bit frustrated there. So you have recently wildcarded, but as you said, there's potential fixture movements as well, but also form comes into it, especially with strikers, and goals breed goals for strikers. I've seen that time and time again. It's often the best metric of picking a striker is who scored last week, and it sounds like you're chasing points, but I don't think you are with strikers because they just go off confidence there, and a striker without confidence is not a striker you really want. So I've got a table of the best strikers over the last 6 matches. And this is last 6 matches they have played, not the last 6 game weeks, hence Haaland being in there still. So it's last 6 matches he's played. I'm hopeful this might give you some ideas about what you might do with your strikers at the moment, because you've got quite a traditional strike force at the moment. Watkins, Solanke and Alvarez. But this shows that in terms of minutes per expected goal involvement, non-penalty, Darwin Núñez, who I haven't been too keen on owning and then I got rid of, and now he starts scoring. But nevertheless, he's got 8 minutes per expected goal involvement, non-penalty every 84 minutes. So basically a goal involvement a game. So that's just above Haaland. So he's a bit better than Haaland at the moment. Chris Wood is behind them, minutes per expected goal involvement every 121 minutes, and he is the talisman for Nottingham Forest at the moment. Alvarez, who is in your team, every 128 minutes. Then you've got Gakpo, Isak, Jimenez, Pedro at Brighton. Remember, Brighton have those great fixtures. Solanke, Jesus. Tony has appeared in this, even though he's only played 2 matches. He's still got a minutes per expected goal involvement, non-penalty, from his one start of every 180 minutes. So very small metric there, but we know what he can do before. Then you've got Edouard behind him and Kuna at Wolves. So there's a lot of choice, isn't there? Which makes me feel pleased I've got a sort of a 3-man. I haven't got like an Archer stinking up the team, for example, because you can even have Chris Wood at 4.9 million. But anyway, there's that list there just for the benefit of those listening on the podcast. What does this tell you about what you might do with your strikers?
Yeah, there's plenty of options out there. I'm just getting a bit impatient, I think, with the Watkins, Alvarez, Solanke strike forces. It's been a bit underwhelming last couple of game weeks. So you're obviously going to start looking at possible shiny new toys. So Haaland's the obvious one. So whenever he's back, he'll come straight back in. But it now could be for any of the front 3. Initially, I was thinking, Alvarez goes to Haaland, easy straight swap. But I kind of like the idea of also having a Manchester City attack and triple up for their double. If Haaland's back, maybe keep Alvarez a little bit longer. Haaland and Foden sounds pretty explosive if they score lots of goals. Elsewhere, Watkins, I've had him since game week 1, but I don't want to fall into the trap of being too loyal to him either. If a better performance striker emerges, better value, better fixtures, all that kind of stuff, I will be open to moving. And Solanke as well, he's been great, but 2 blanks, I think it is, in the last couple of game weeks. Fixtures are okay, short term, so he probably will get a bit more time. But players like, Isak's been excellent this season. There's always the concern with Wilson, but whenever Wilson's got issues, I think Isak's up there as one of the best FPL strikers there is. Darwin, I don't think I've been on Darwin at all this season. I've been quite reluctant to go there. But, if you take away all the narrative that goes with Darwin and you just look at the figures, if you look at the FPL page and you look at his goals and assists, it's pretty good for his price.
Yeah.
And if Liverpool do get that double game week in 25, then I'm certainly not going to rule out going there. So if my strikers are all, playing for their places at the moment, and players like Darwin are just waiting there as possible replacements. And Tony's an obvious one. If he stays at Brentford, I'm probably going to find it hard to resist getting him, especially with the double game week in mind. The fixtures don't bother me. So
Yeah, so I mean, I've got Haaland still in my team, so he's just going to stay, I think, until he's back. And yeah, Tony is someone I'm looking at as well. But I'd be reluctant to part with Watkins for the next fixture, Gameweek 22. Is at home to Newcastle. Newcastle are pretty poor defensively, away from home especially. So I do fancy Watkins to get a return there. And then you've got Sheffield United away, and that's a tough sell as well for Watkins. Then you've got Manchester United at home, Fulham away. That's when I'm starting to look at perhaps ditching Watkins if he's still not performing. And I think you make a good point about Bournemouth, about with Solanke, that obviously he has blanked last couple, but his last couple of fixtures have been quite tough. And he's got West Ham away, and then Nottingham Forest at home, Fulham away. I mean, these aren't too bad. And then when you get Newcastle away in 25, that's when Solanke could become Tony for me, I think. And then is Pedro. Now, Pedro is playing tonight for Brighton. And with Luton, Crystal Palace, Tottenham, Sheffield United, Everton, Fulham, and Nottingham Forest, a really great run, the best run of fixtures at the moment. He is definitely playing as a Brighton fan for a place in my team. So if anyone does go, I might do something like Solanke to Pedro maybe, or Solanke to Tony, or perhaps Watkins at some point as well. But yeah, it's tough though, isn't it? It's getting the timing right. But there's so much choice, and there's so many good ones with good fixtures coming up as well.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I think FPL strike forces might start to shake up a wee bit over the next few weeks if those we mentioned keep blanking. And Pedro's a very attractive one. I think Pedro's arguably the most overlooked FPL attacker because a lot of us, myself included, started the season with him and got burned by a bit of rotation. But you've got to forget about that because he's been great since. And obviously a few injuries at Brighton has increased his minutes, penalties, just a very good player. And we mentioned earlier on the season ticker, Brighton are right at the top. So the other thing about Pedro is, very cheap when we're going to want to get expensive midfielders back. We might want to get Kevin De Bruyne for a double game week, for example. So Pedro is a great enabler. I kind of view him. I've got Garnacho. I know he's a bit cheaper, but you could even get away with Pedro as an eighth attacker for people who like to go down that route.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with a lot of people have still got Salah in their team as well. Apologies for my dog barking. A lot of players have still got Salah in their team as well. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of cash. And Haaland, people like me, have still got him. It's a lot of cash there. But you can get away with it at the moment. Garnacho. There's literally a fighter jet going over my house at the moment. Probably. And my dog barking, which presumably that's why my dog's barking. I live quite near to Yeovilton, which is the Royal Navy Air Service place.
Given the game week that we've had, it's probably the Red Arrows passing by.
It could be. Occasionally see the Red Arrows over here, but often it's some crazy jet fighters. I've completely lost my train of thought there with the dog and the fighter jets. So essentially, what was I talking about? I was talking about the strikers.
We're on Pedro.
Yeah, that's it, Pedro. Yeah. So I think with Pedro, I think he's a really good, not just as a Brighton fan, but I just think he's a really good asset to own because he's on penalties and the likes of a Dingra and Matoma to compete for his the many places he can play up top. They're just not around at the moment as well. So I do think he is good, but it's just getting the timing right. And I think those who've timed, say, Darwin Núñez correctly, you can only do that with hindsight. I had him for a couple of weeks and I was just frustrated and I just didn't enjoy it at all. And I still wouldn't, I don't think, even though obviously I would enjoy a double-digit haul. But I just don't think... It's just timing it right. And Liverpool's fixtures, they got Chelsea at home and Arsenal away. And I don't know if I would jump on Darwin Núñez then. It's that Burnley at home game in 24 when I would think about him, especially if he's got a double in 25.
Yeah, again, the way this game week was spread out, I managed to catch a lot of games, which was good. And I watched the first half of Liverpool, and again, watching Darwin closely, I came away from it thinking, no interest whatsoever in this guy. There's a lot of things he did badly, giving up possession in the final third and stuff like that. But again, when you strip all that away, he gets into the positions and he does have a decent amount of attacking returns. I think I've seen a tweet that is he the first player this season who has 10 goals, 10 assists in all
Yes.
competitions?
Yeah.
So we can't ignore the numbers. I think he's one of those players. The key is if you're going to buy him, don't watch him. Just check the result and check his points, and quite often the points are fine. Again, just remember his price. He's
Yeah.
7.4. You're not paying 11 million for this guy, so
No.
we maybe need to. Those of us who've been maybe reluctant to go there or been burned before, we probably need to reframe it a wee bit and maybe just be a bit more open to the idea.
Yeah. And also, those who do own him, do remember, though, that whilst Darwin Núñez does have 28 points, 3 goals and an assist last 6 matches, Chris Wood has 40 points and is considerably cheaper with 5 goals and an assist. So it's really Chris Wood owners that we should be congratulating. I'm just a bitter for getting rid of Darwin Núñez. Okay, Man City players. Now, your team, you are currently, well, we'll look at your bus team in a sec, but you're looking presumably at a Man City option because of that great fixture at home to Burnley. But that does come 2 or 3 days after an important cup match with Tottenham. And we still a bit in the dark at the moment about Haaland. So far, he's with the team wherever they are in the warm weather training, but he's not actually training at the moment, and that's currently at around late morning on a Monday. So we might have some news later in the day. Meanwhile, I've got Kevin De Bruyne, who is possibly only going to play 30 minutes, but can get a hat-trick in that 30 minutes. So Man City players should be on our mind, and you've got Alvarez and Foden. So I've got a table of Man City options, and I did a whole video on Man City options, attacking ones and defending ones, but it's just the attacking ones we're looking at here. And this shows that De Bruyne is your man for minutes per expected goal involvement. Small sample, but we know what he can do over a number of years. But minutes per expected goal every 61 minutes. Haaland is just behind him with 67 minutes. Bearing in mind, I did this last week, so that's why some of the figures are slightly different to that. Attacking the attackers table. And then you've got Oscar Bob as well. He's making the most of his appearances, minutes per expected goal involvement every 69 minutes. Alvarez every 107 minutes. Doku every 170 minutes. And Foden's in there as well, every 178 minutes. He has got a goal involvement there, and he's created 17 chances. So I look at this table and I think, yeah, Foden, good option. Haaland, if he was fit, a good option. De Bruyne is probably the best, and if I get De Bruyne in for Salah this week, I'd probably put the armband on him. I'd take 20 minutes, 30 minutes of De Bruyne.
Yeah, while you've been talking, I've been doing some tinkering. I shouldn't have done it, but once you put the table up and I see De Bruyne there, it just got me thinking.
Yeah.
Let's say we get news that Haaland is not going to be available for this Burnley fixture. We talked about Saka earlier. I said I'm probably going to give him some more patience, but I've got 9 million in the bank, burning a hole. So I just had a look to see if I'd be able to get De Bruyne and then still be able to get Haaland easily. So I actually could. So if there was no other issues, something I could look at. If I get to next week, Monday, Tuesday, and I think De Bruyne is the best captain for the game week, I could do Saka to De Bruyne for the armband.
Yeah.
And I would still have enough cash to get Haaland in a straight swap for Alvarez or Solanke. So that would end up leaving me with De Bruyne, Foden, and Haaland. I would have to sell Alvarez actually because I'd already have the three. So it's just something that I hadn't really thought about. And again, that's something for me to think about for the next week. And obviously monitor the other games in between and see how the cup game goes and if there's any team leaks, etc., etc. But De Bruyne made a huge impression, didn't he, when he came on in that game? It's FPL managers. I think we'd all love to be there. We do have our doubts over minutes, but our minutes going to be massively concerning. Even if he gets 30 here, 60 here, he's probably going to do damage. So he even captaining him for 60 minutes or 30 minutes, it almost feels as good as captaining anyone else. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the FA Cup game is going to be absolutely key. So, for example, in that game, if De Bruyne starts that would say to me he's not going to start the Burnley game. But if he's on the bench again, and then he comes on in the 60th minute, 70th minute in that Spurs game, then that says to me his minutes are still being managed to that extent. And so I would say, with Burnley, he could even start it because it's that sort of game where he could start and do 60 minutes, but I think he would get 30 minutes. And I would also, there's the other possibility he might not play at all if he gets significant minutes in that Spurs game. In which case, have a good vice captain. But yeah, I think obviously Haaland is top, but I can't get De Bruyne. You've just worked out. You've got a way to it. I've got a way to De Bruyne. What it doesn't seem. It just seems a logical thing to do with the knowledge we have at the moment. But bear in mind, there's going to be significant changes. We think, obviously, with that cup game. Yeah, it's going to be. It's going to keep weighing on my mind. But one thing I'm not going to do, and I know you're not, is press the button and get De Bruyne in now.
Yeah, it's funny. It's something I think maybe those of us who take the game too seriously and overthink it. Sometimes I like to just rewind it back and say, what would a casual manager do? What would someone who doesn't put as much time in do? They would just see De Bruyne against Burnley. They would just buy him.
Yeah.
And very often it turns out quite well
Yeah.
for managers who put very little thought into it. So one caveat is if I did commit to the De Bruyne route this week, then Haaland back, it's going to be tricky to get Salah, and it might be a -4. So I need to just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
If it has too much of a knock-on effect to get Salah back for a possible Liverpool double, and obviously, fitness dependent on Salah, but certainly De Bruyne is one to chew on for the next week or so.
I think looking at the news we've got here, so obviously he's got a hamstring injury. He's gone back to Liverpool from the Egypt squad, but if he ends up being fit enough and Egypt qualify for the semi-finals, then he'll go back to AFCON. So either way, injured or not, he's not playing 23, 24. I don't think. I can't see him playing in those matches. We might have more news later, but as it stands at the moment, he's not back until 25, I would imagine.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
So for me, I've still held him because I'm absolutely insane this season with keeping hold of people, even though they're injured. So I'm definitely going to move him on because at least we have a definite there. With Haaland, it's like, we might get fit, might not. And I think that last Newcastle game was the first time Pep said, no, he's definitely not playing. We just didn't know with the previous ones. But at least with Salah, we've got some inkling. That's just not going to happen. So yeah, you don't have to. In my case, I can swap him out and then worry about getting Salah back via Saka. In your case, you don't have to worry about it for about 2 or 3 weeks, at least. So you should be okay. But yeah, you might face a tough choice. And I guess you've got Alexander-Arnold. I don't in my team. So that is the difference between getting Salah
I'm kind of
and
happy Trent's already in place. That was kind of the reason for keeping him was him and Bowen. It was basically hopefully they're back quickly, and then it saves the transfers later.
Yeah.
Just on the Manchester City guys again, if I don't buy Kevin De Bruyne and if we don't have Erling Haaland, I will have Foden and Alvarez. And I think if it's a straight shootout between those two for the armband, keen to hear your thoughts on that. I don't think it's straightforward. No. I've owned Alvarez for a long time, and he can be quite frustrating. Foden often passes the eye test, but doesn't always get the FPL points. But again, probably the penalty factor would probably swing me towards Alvarez. Yeah. I know a lot of people captained him a couple of weeks ago, and he got his goal. So, any thoughts on that as a captaincy decision if it comes to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of various tiers. So, as you said about De Bruyne, he's sort of the casual's choice, and I would also say he's also the dullard choice as well. And that's bearing in mind if Haaland's not available. And all of this is caveated. If Haaland is available, he is the captain. So if he's not available, then down to De Bruyne. And then you're looking at others. So you're looking at minutes, whether they're going to start or not. I think Foden will start the Spurs game. So I don't know whether he'll start and play in the Burnley game. But once again, last 30 minutes could be good enough for a haul. I think the sexy Maverick pick is Doku in this game. I think him against Burnley could be outrageous. And that'll be the moment, like with people captaining Darwin Núñez this week, or Jota even this week, Doku will be the cool Maverick differential king one. So in a long way of saying, I think that all of the Man City options, there's something good you can say about them. But Pep might have other things to say about that with the team sheet, and that puts a caveat over them all for the captaincy. And if I don't go for De Bruyne or Haaland, I don't think I would trust any of the others for the captaincy. I think Doku's just would be cool to have. But I don't quite trust Foden for minutes in that particular game. I don't think he's a rotation risk. I just think for that particular game. And so I mean, part of me, I don't have Richarlison, but he's at home to Brentford, and I think he might be the best captain.
Yeah, I was looking at a few captaincy candidates this morning for the 59th Minute podcast, which I'm doing on Tuesday, and Richarlison was up there, I think maybe in my top three.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the fixtures here as well. Elsewhere, there's not a huge amount of fixtures that jump out this upcoming game week 4 captaincy. I don't think too many people will be confident to captain a Saka now away to Nottingham Forest, given that he's been disappointing. Elsewhere, Villa play Newcastle, so that kind of rules that game out for me for the armband. Liverpool, Chelsea, probably likewise. So it's not straightforward. Another rogue choice. You mentioned Doku, someone like a Rashford, even for those who have him. I wouldn't be against it. I think it's good that players like Jota went big last game week. It might open the door or make people more likely to take a punt on the captaincy while Haaland is not available, because if you can get it right, it's obviously the easiest way to shoot up the rankings if you can nail it.
I mean, but both of us this week got a captaincy blank, and both of us have taken a red arrow, but it's not a major red arrow. We're not like miles away from where we were. And that's because, and that sums up the differential week it was. So Palmer and Saka both had over 100% effective ownership. But, you had Jota captainers, you had Tony captainers, Darwin captainers, and Gameweek 22, if Haaland is not available, and we presume Salah isn't as well, it's going to be wide open again. And De Bruyne is going to be he's shot up twice now. He's probably going to go up a third time. I think he could end up being quite well owned in comparison to where we were at Game Week 21. And I also think, you're going to get some Watkins captainers. You're going to get some Isak captainers. You see what I'm saying here? You're going to get a whole bunch of people captaining different players, and you're going to get Foden captainers. So I don't think it's the week where there's huge gains to be made, but it could be the week where, hopefully, fingers crossed, if you get the captaincy wrong, it shouldn't matter too much, because there's such a wide spread in your mini leagues and the overall rankings.
It's thinking of the way FPL Twitter is these days. To me, it feels like a lot of people end up converging on the same captain as the week progresses. Last week, a lot of people talked about Palmer earlier in the week, but the majority of people ended up switching over to Saka, myself as well. I think if you do see a few content creators going a certain way, the sheep do tend to follow. But well done to those who stuck with Palmer and got the rewards for that. But I'm thinking ahead to next week. I can already see a scenario where, depending on the minutes in the Manchester City Cup game, a lot of people could converge to, when you see the team reveals on FPL Twitter next Tuesday evening, transfer De Bruyne in, captain Kevin De Bruyne. I can see it happening. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, going back to that point I made earlier about the Palmer captaincy decision, and that if I'd have done that research afterwards, and I think, you've made the point before, I think it was in your New Year's resolutions video about looking at... Oh no, it was actually around about that time. I think it was a General's Orders video, but it was just about getting that information and being patient with it. And I think sometimes that patience is not just sort of waiting for information. It's being proactive and getting that information yourself. So, for example, that talisman video I do, and I know there's a number of people, including at Fantasy Football Scout, Tom and Neil do, where they do the sort of matchups as well. Say, well, this team are weak on their left, this attacker's on the right. He could have a field day, and it's those types of matchups. So I'll probably be looking at those in a bit more detail, and certainly will when I have a chat with Tom on the Goals Imminent video. But it's wide open. It's definitely wide open. But I totally get what you see. I can definitely see that narrative going. It's gradually the De Bruyne thing's going to move, and then everyone's going to panic. Oh, I haven't got De Bruyne. But he might only pay 15 minutes, and he might do nothing.
Yeah, and it might make future moves trickier as well. So don't fall into the trap of just buying them late. No. Think ahead as well.
Okay, let's have a look at your bus team. So this probably sums up everything you've been saying about the decisions you've got to do. Do you want to run through your bus team and just sort of recap on those sort of key decisions that you're facing in terms of your transfer and that captaincy that we've discussed?
Yeah, so a lot of the players this week have good fixtures on paper. So we've got David Raya and Saka away to Forest. Pedro Porro home to Brentford. Estupiñán's away to Luton. Trent could well be back for Chelsea. I hope he is, because it'd be nice to have him when not everyone owns him at the moment, and we'll be trying to get him back in. Foden and Alvarez at home to Burnley at the moment, and that's where the armband is currently on Alvarez, but we'll see what happens if De Bruyne makes an appearance, etc. Bowen's home to Bournemouth, frustrating recently, but a good fixture on paper. Palmer's away to Liverpool. He's a talisman. He stays in the team. Watkins at home to Newcastle, which is a good fixture these days with the recent Newcastle defensive numbers. And Solanke blanking recently as well, but I like the West Ham fixture. And I like having Solanke when a lot of people have Areola. I like backing my striker to wipe out the goalkeeper clean sheet. So, yeah, that's the team on paper. Garnacho's the first sub, which is always decent if he's needed. So it will depend on the status of Haaland, obviously. It will depend on Trent's fitness. But yeah, I'm tempted, very tempted by De Bruyne now that I've looked at it during the video.
Okay, so yeah, chances are Alexander Arnold should be fit for this one, from what we know. But if he's not, what would you do there? Because your weak link would possibly be your third defender, Gusto, away to Liverpool, and then Bell at home to Brighton. So I've got, as I keep saying every video, Alfie Doughty. So I don't mind playing him against Brighton because I'm not expecting a clean sheet. But Bell, I'm not sure about. So what would you do? Would you just be happy just to go into that with Gusto or Bell?
Not really. If Trent was definitely going to be out, it might change my plans because the front seven is fine the way it is. Then it would be a case of probably improving maybe a Gusto possibly when the matchup's not great this week against Liverpool. But there's always the rolling option as well. You know, I could just take it on the chin. If there's doubts over Trent, maybe leave him in the 11. If he doesn't play, Gusto comes in. Hopefully it's 2 points, not minus 2 points. Lucky not to get sent off again. You know, when I got him off the bench this week, so I almost got my second Gusto red card of the season, but thankfully I'm getting 5 points instead. So yeah, it'll be. I probably would just roll in that scenario.
Okay.
So yeah, obviously game week's a long time away, so I'm sure something else will crop up in the meantime.
Okay, there is plenty more videos and podcasts in Gameweek 22, which will help Mark and me, hopefully, to really pin down some of those tough decisions that we've got, particularly around a captaincy and what could be an open game week if Haaland's not back. That sort of fighting the Twitter narrative that's gonna push towards De Bruyne. That could end up being an absolutely brilliant narrative, and De Bruyne bangs. It could be awful, and he barely plays a minute and lets us down. But also, yeah, just some of those options there. So I mean, I'm looking at this. I mean, I'm probably gonna. I've got Garnacho first sub as well, but I've got Haaland, so Garnacho probably will play for me. And so that's a sort of difference there. But I think a lot of players with those cheap players, Chris Wood, for example, and maybe not in this game against us, but you never know. But Chris Wood, Garnacho, Palmer is still really cheap as well. I mean, this is whilst you and I haven't had good weeks, this is a golden age, I think, for FPL. Weirdly, the amount of choice, the amount of players we've just talked about.
A friend of mine wildcarded in Gameweek 21,
Yeah.
and he sent me a picture of his team, and he had 13 million in the bank. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
No, I've seen with I was looking at your Elite 64 league. I was just looking at the top 5 or so just to see, because sometimes I do that just to see how far away I am from them in terms of their thinking. And yeah, I mean, it ranged from 5 to 6 million in the bank to there was a 13 million in there as well. But a lot of them, yourself, 9 million. And I was just thinking, you know, this wouldn't have, I've never known this before, where there is so much choice and so many cheap players, and I still see this narrative about the template. My God, I don't know what the template is at the moment. There is no template. It's a total free fall of Salah and Haaland.
We said at the start of the season it was shaping up to be the first normal season and a good season, and I think that's what we have. Yeah. And I think we're just getting into the fun part now, you know, chip season and all that. Yeah. So people who maybe aren't where they want to be in many
Yeah.
leagues and stuff. There's plenty of routes to go to make up ground. So
Great.
a very exciting part of the season we're moving into now.
Definitely. We'll be back again next week. We'll get your firm thoughts about your transfers. That'll be next Monday, as usual. But the deadline's Tuesday, so this will be quite firm plans there, and we'll have a lot of information about cup games as well. There's all the regular videos are around this week as well, and next week. And we'll have that all important team news I'll be doing with Neil on Tuesday afternoon, which I'll definitely be very keen to hear Neil's thoughts there on those moves. Thanks a lot for your time, Mark. Good luck with the game week, which is miles away, January the 30th. And good luck with those decisions, and good luck assessing all that information. Take care. See you soon.
Bye-bye.